you see Lizard being hit by a punch. But there's nothing there. You just see his face moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously the internet went bananas about this. Like they went nuts. They went nuts. You even had people on YouTube painting in other Spider-Mans to see that this was actually the 3 Spider-Mans. Yeah. It was just insanity. Welcome to the Visual Effects Notes podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by ftrack and Action VFX. ftrack is an Academy Award-winning project management, production tracking, and media review platform for the creative industry. I've been using ftrack for the last 6 years, and it has helped me with all my visual effects projects. Forget about all the messy spreadsheets and the shared documents. ftrack is the best way to create a visual effects pipeline and to manage and communicate with your team and clients both locally and remotely. You can go to the video's description below for more information, or you can visit ftrack.com. This episode is also sponsored by Action VFX. Action VFX is the best place to get high-quality stock footage. I've used Action VFX in game cinematics, short films, trailers, and commercials. They are the best stock footage I've ever come across. You can also use the promo code Hugo's Desk for 10% off. Please visit actionvfx.com to learn more. And now on to the show.
Hi everyone, welcome to this new VFX Notes podcast. I'm Ian Fales from Befores and Afters, and as always, I'm joined by Hugo Guerra from Hugo's Desk. How you going there, Hugo?
How's it going, Ian? Everything okay? Welcome, everyone.
It's great to see you. I heard you had a sore back. Want me to crack it?
Oh, yeah, do that. Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh, nice one. Nice.
Yep.
Well, that's our really ordinary attempt at humor. Of course, today, Hugo and I are going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, the billion-dollar film from Marvel Sony.
I'm all ready to go. Look at that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, very.
And I have my Spider-Man lamp on the back there. I'm all ready to go. Spider-Man, let's go.
Firstly, a big thank you to our sponsors, of course, and to our Patreons, both at Hugo's Desk and Befores and Afters. You guys get to watch this ad-free 3 days earlier than everyone else, and we really, really do appreciate you signing up to be a Patreon. Your names are also at the back of this video, which we think of as a little bit of a thank you. But Hugo, that's so great that we've got that support, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The show wouldn't be the same, and the show could not happen if we didn't have this support. It's great. Thank you so much. Just head off to Patreon at Hugo's Desk or Patreon at Before and Afters. And you get to pick which of the hosts you prefer the best, and then you can support one of them, or you can support both of them if you want.
To be clear, we have these exclusive access videos at the lowest level, so it's a very cheap monthly investment. But thank you anyway. We wanted to make sure to give you a shout out. Hugo, I think we should just dive into this film. You've rewatched it literally today, and even after you rewatched it, you observed there's so much in it. And that is my reaction to this film. I'll just quickly mention that I really enjoyed it. I loved it. It's for the fans. It's for people who love the old Spider-Man films and who have come into the Avengers. But I can barely remember all the sequences. The ones I remember the most are the ones I did visual effects coverage at Befores and Afters on. But was that your reaction today, that there's just so much in it?
Yeah, it is. This film, not only it's big because it's 2 hours and 30 minutes, so it's really big. Although it's not going to be the biggest one, we know already that the new Doctor Strange is going to be even bigger. It's almost going to be 3 hours. But yeah, there's so much on this film. There's so many sequences, so many set pieces. Spoilers, of course, if you haven't seen the film, you should probably not listen to this podcast now. But don't get... Yes, so if you guys have not watched the film, you probably should wait to watch this podcast. That's just our advice. So here we go. obviously this film is so big that you don't get one Spider-Man, you get 3 Spider-Mans. So everything is by 3. Also not, you know the typical film where we have one villain. No, we don't have one villain. We have 4 villains. It's just like everything is the biggest thing in the world. And I guess it worked out because, the film is a critical darling. It has 93 on Rotten Tomatoes. It has 98 on the audience of Rotten Tomatoes. It's the biggest grossing film of Sony of all times. Although, let's be clear, grossing doesn't mean that it's a good film, but in this case, the film is quite good, and it also is the highest grossing film of Sony's history. Also, already third grossing film on ever on the United States, and this is as of 22nd of February. It's already running at 1.8 billion. So yeah, it's insane, the reaction. I was on the cinema yesterday. The film has been out for 2 months, and there were still people on the theater. What is going on with this film?
I think what's even more amazing is it came out when Omicron and the pandemic was still a thing, and of course it is still a thing. Yet people went to the cinema, and not only did they go to the cinema, they embraced being back with people in the cinema and cheering at certain moments, like when the old Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, turn up.
Shows up,
So that is one reason why people love this film. It was a collective experience, I felt, Hugo.
Yeah.
That doesn't come with many other films at the moment.
No, but I also think that there is a secret sauce on this film that makes it so loved by everyone, and everyone flocks to it. This kind of happened a bit like a couple of years ago when PlayStation launched a game for Spider-Man as well. And out of the blue, it became the best-selling PlayStation 4 game of all times. It was insane. And I think it has to do with Spider-Man. Spider-Man itself, I don't know the numbers by heart, but it seems to me like Spider-Man is the highest grossing superhero of all times. It must be. Like, Spider-Man is up there. I think it's even more popular than Batman. It's even more popular than Superman. I think right now Spider-Man is the most popular superhero in the world, and anything with Spider-Man related would always sell, either a game, a film, or anything. And you even see the backlash of that, even like Tom Holland, for example, himself, which is the main actor that plays Spider-Man right now. He can even drag that popularity even to other films. For example, I just recently watched Uncharted, which is not a very good film, but it's also not a very bad film. That film is also doing really well because everyone goes to see him because he was Spider-Man. I think the Spider-Man as a whole, as a franchise, has this magnetic pull to people, and people had to go to the cinema to see it.
I think I agree. Also, it's all ages, right? Little kids wear Spider-Man costumes and pajamas all the way to older than us, Hugo.
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're looking at my shirt, right? Like where I'm an old man wearing a Spider-Man shirt. No, I know. And I think that has to do with the fact that this character can connect so well to people, and that's why people love it. Because he's just a normal dude. He's like a teenager.
He's
like a young.
He's a nerd.
Exactly. And he's a kid, and he has kids problems, and he has teenager problems, and he's not very he has a lot of doubts, and he's very nervous. I think anyone can relate to this. Anyone can relate to this character. It's not like Batman. You can't relate to Bruce Wayne because he's a billionaire. Like, it's like, okay, fine. You can't really relate to
Hugo.
You can't relate to Superman because he's invincible. So it's a bit like, he's a MacGuffin himself. But Spider-Man is, especially on this film, you really feel for him. But one thing I must say though, and I hope people don't get disappointed, by the second, I've now watched it twice on the cinema, twice on IMAX. I actually liked the film the best the first time I watched it the second time. I think the film was better the first time around. Second time, it's a bit felt a bit long, and it felt that it could have been a bit edited. I felt like it was not as tight as I think the first time I watched it, I was blown away by the entire thing of having all these villains and having these 3 Spider-Mans. Now that I've watched it again and I had time to think about it, I don't think it's that good, the film. The film is good, and the film is really entertaining, and the film has really, really some amazing moments. But I still, personally, in my opinion, don't want anyone to be upset, still prefer the original Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. I feel like they have more heart, and they are weirder, and also maybe perhaps more connected to the original comic books, and it's just that strange B-movie feeling that Sam Raimi gives to films, which I really enjoyed. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree with you that I like Sam Raimi's films the most.
Yeah.
And I rewatched those with my nephews after we saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and they were even better than I remember.
Yeah.
And they didn't need to be tied into Avengers stuff.
No.
What probably makes No Way Home feel a little bit long is the whole Doctor Strange connection. Now, look, that's part of the plot. It's the whole thing.
Of course.
But there is that thing in these Marvel Sony films where you keeping some characters in and not showing others. And I don't know, it has that double effect, Hugo, of being fun to see Doctor Strange, but, you know...
Oh, I love Doctor Strange.
We could have just had Spidey.
Yeah, it's my favorite Marvel movie. Like, I find one of my favorite Marvel movies together with Ant-Man, exactly because it's the weirdest of them all. But no, I agree with you. It could have been just Spider-Man. And because of this film, I went back and watched everything again. I watched the Sam Raimi as well, like you just did. I also went to see the other 2, the Amazing Spider-Mans, the 2 other films. And I must say, I feel like they got a bit of too much criticism at the time. They're not that bad. They're actually quite good.
They're good. And Andrew Garfield is this kind of darker, different dark kind of way Spider-Man dealing with, teenage adult issues. I like them, and I really do, the whole death stuff is kind of a bit more upfront there.
And it's very heavy, of course. It's very dark, and there's a beautiful moment on this new film where he finally saves MJ, which really relates to the death of Gwen. And it's, again, we're spoiling all of them, so sorry, guys. But okay. The film, I also thought Andy Garfield's Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Mans, had something really special in terms of the camera angles and the wideness of them, and also the stylization of the imaging. I felt that they were so close to the comic book. The stuff that Spider-Man did on those films is very elastic. He was moving in a very strange way, the way that his legs are very wide, and he's very, very stylized on that film. And the special effects, the visual effects areas are highly stylized to a point that almost looks like an animated movie. And I felt that was really fresh at the time. I really felt that was really beautiful. And the film has some amazing cinematography, those original ones. But I think now it seems to me that they are now reevaluating those films as well, because now suddenly everyone loves Andy Garfield again. Yeah. But at the time, a lot of people hated him, which was a shame.
Okay, so you brought it up. I actually think I do like those Amazing Spider-Man films. What I don't like about them is the villains.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is they're the most unrealistic villains. Yeah. As in, they're more magical. Lizard is a creature, and Electro, is a creature as well. And it's also why I didn't really relate to Sandman in the third original film. I actually loved that character and the way it was played, but because he's a magical character, I didn't have the same impact as Green Goblin, who's a human, or and Doc Ock, who's a human.
Yeah.
And I think that can sometimes be said for any Marvel film where the characters are a bit more magical than some sort of plausible human thing or person or creature. Like Rocket Raccoon is a creature, but he's human-like.
Yeah,
and so
I know exactly
totally
what
believe him. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
I wonder whether that's one reason why The Amazing Spider-Man didn't resonate with me anyway as much back then.
But as a story and as a plot with Spider-Man and Gwen, I thought the chemistry between them was amazing.
Agreed.
I'm so sorry, guys. Guys and girls, this podcast is not about those two films.
No, sorry.
Sorry about that. Let's get back.
Let's get it back on track.
Let's get it back on track. I wanted to. Sorry, go for it.
Because there's so much in this film, we thought we might concentrate on just 3 key sequences from No Way Home. Which also, happily, are sequences that different visual effects vendors did. Which makes it easier to discuss most of the work in the film. The first sequence is this freeway chase where Doc Ock suddenly arrives. Very exciting, lots of humor. A pretty huge sequence, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. Before we just jump in right into that sequence, I just wanted to say one little thing about the rest of the film as a whole. One thing I felt really interesting on this film, and I wish they would have done more of that, was the way it was shot. The cinematographer for this film is Mauro Fiore. He's an Italian cinematographer, and he has some really interesting films done before. He was he won the cinematography for Avatar, which I think most people forgot, but that was an amazing cinematography piece. He also was the cinematographer of Training Day, of Equalizer, of a lot of really cool drama films with Antonio Fuqua. And he was the photographer of this film. And when the film starts, when you have this intro, because I know we're not going to talk about in detail about the visual effects of that intro, but the camera work on the intro when Spider-Man is trying to leave New York with MJ, trying to run away from all the press and all the people, those POV moments where the camera is really close to them, super wide, attached to them while they were swinging, that was some beautiful shots right there. And I felt that I kind of wish that there was more of that during the entire film. I felt that on other fight sequences, we didn't have that kind of luxurious type of camera work where the camera was either attached to Spider-Man or attached to MJ or attached to the swinging. It really felt like you were flying with them. I felt like Mario, the cinematographer, did an amazing job there on those sequences, which were much more grounded. Unfortunately, the rest of the film kind of loses that a bit. I feel like the other sequences don't have that kind of creativity and look, but I understand because it's the intro. The film starts really strong. It's like, I think it's one of the strongest intros of the cinematic universe of Marvel. The beginning is so funny and so so well shot and so fast all the way to Spider-Man's apartment. Because I felt it was great.
They're running away from the media. And so we can all relate to that a little bit. And there's been that big revelation in the previous film. I agree. I love the opening. Maybe there was a deliberate decision in this film to not feature New York Central City as much as the other films because it's been done. I know we're not going to talk about the VFX, but I loved those close-up swinging shots. And all I could think of was, oh my God, Zendaya's hair. Is some of that just amazing comp work, roto, but is it also generated hair as well? I didn't get a chance to ask anybody about that in particular, but I would love to know. So have you
there's
worked
no
on
breakdowns
those shots?
There's no breakdowns of that shot. No, this film is massive, guys. We're looking at 2,400 visual effect shots in total. This is insane. It's like almost 2,500. There's 12 vendors on this thing. And it's just insanity. It's big credits to everyone involved because, to deal with 12. My hat goes to the overhaul production VFX soup, to Kelly Port, because to deal with 12 facilities and to deliver 12 high-end visual effects, everything matching between all vendors, including some assets that were between the vendors, like the box and like Dr. Swain. Like there was a lot of sharing of assets. It's incredible that it looks all seamless and it looks like it's a big achievement. And I feel like this is probably one of the reasons why it's nominated for the Oscars, because this is a big film. 2,500 shots. Tickets must be one of the biggest productions ever on Marvel and Sony side. It's just insane.
And made during the pandemic. Anyway.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, let's jump into the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. I really love that sequence just to watch, but also to learn about, because it's just that classic Marvel movie making of shooting on a backlot in Atlanta, where a lot of these Marvel films now get made. Shooting against blue screen. They did absolutely have cars and freeway pieces and special effects setups to enable, the splitting of cars and the throwing of cars when Doc Ock arrives. But I thought the visual effects studio, Digital Domain, responsible for that sequence, did a pretty awesome job of building out that New York environment. A bit of New York we don't really get to see in many films, actually. Mm-hmm. And to deal with digital cars and digital Spidey and partial digital Doc Ock and fully digital Doc Ock probably for that sequence. So that was a really good one. What did you think of it, Hugo?
Yeah, I thought it was great. This sequence is, of course, the first time that Doc Ock shows up, and also, it's the first time we have, I think it's the first fight of the film as well. It's a massive scene. It's like 500 shots. It's really, really massive with apparently over 500 unique assets and like 14 character builds. This is just really complex. And yes, you're right. They did shoot on the backlog, and they did build a part of the freeway. There's a lot of blue screen around the entire parking lot. And as if you're watching this on YouTube, I am putting in the behind the scenes of the shooting of this while we're talking, so you can kind of see the complexity of this shot. But it's really seamless. When I first watched the film, I'll be honest, I first watched the film the first time, and I didn't even thought that would have been a full CG environment. I didn't, because you're watching the film, you see the fight, because the film starts so grounded. They're in the cars. He goes into the car to talk with the person from the university. You think, oh, this is probably just like a freeway. Why wouldn't it be a freeway? Why would they actually do it in CG? But then you realize when you see the breakdowns from the visual effects side, and you see the breakdowns on the YouTube and the breakdowns of everything, you start to realize that they actually build a full 360 environment in full CG of everything. The cars, the highway, every single thing is a full CG environment. And this, as usual for Marvel, this was done, and you can kind of see it on the wonderful interview that Ian has on Before and Afters with Scott Ellison. Like, you can kind of see that they are talking about the way that the Marvel works. Marvel usually changes the edit many times, and they keep changing and evolving and trying and testing the edit with several people in the company. And so they keep tweaking and turning things. So obviously DD knew that they were probably going to change the camera a lot, and that's why they've created this full environment. Gives a huge, obviously, let me be devil advocate. Some people might think, what an exaggeration to build a full set like this for you to almost not watch some of it because you're just watching it through the camera's angle. But this technique of building the entire thing on a 360 environment so you have every angle covered is really a testament to how we work these days. This kind of has to do with the way we work on Unreal and the way we work in real time. Everything now is a set. Everything now has become a 360 environment. Long are the times where we just build the assets just for that angle, and then we matte paint parts. No, this is beyond that now.
Yeah.
They've built the whole thing in case they could turn, just in case they could rotate the camera,
You're of course right, but you're also right, Hugo, is that I think anyone in visual effects is not surprised about that at all.
No, of course not. No.
That goes for even if they're shooting in a room like this, they just will, and it's because it adds some flexibility for down the track. But it's also a heavy action sequence.
Yeah,
and
they
so
had to.
They could pull a car from anywhere, and you might see a different angle, and you.
But that's why it becomes so surprising. That's why I was saying that I didn't understood that at the time when I first saw it, because you first start with just the car, just a conversation on the car. She opens the door, and then Doc Ock shows up, and then, there's a couple of cars turned around. Obviously, by the progression of the scene, it gets more and more and more exploded. Every kind of, like, the whole thing gets exploded practically. Everything gets destroyed. So progressively, of course, they had to do it in full CG because they had to destroy the whole thing. But you don't get that in the beginning. And that's why I think it's so clever, the way it's edited and the way it's built, the scene, the ramp up to that scene. Because it starts just on an absolutely regular highway. And you don't even, when you have these set pieces, you're out of space or you're inside like a big war zone, that's a set piece. This didn't look like a set piece. It looked like it was just a regular dramatic sequence of him trying to get to university. And then it became a massive, massive action scene. I thought that was really smart. And it hides the fact that it's a visual effect scene. It kind of does. It kind of hides it because you don't think about it because you're so gripped by the story of watching what's happening unfolding in your eyes,
Yeah. And what about the Doc Ock side of this? I was so excited in the trailers to see that he was back because I had been enamored by Imageworks' original work on Doc Ock in the Sam Raimi film. And, there was some full-on digital human stuff going on back then.
Yeah.
A lot of nice mixing of real Alfred Molina with the digidouble and then, close up on the face for many sequences. The other part of him is the tentacles. Yeah. And it's funny, when this film was, being promoted, there was some strange classic CG versus practical discussion about this stuff, Hugo, in terms of the tentacles. Because it's true, on the original film, there were some practical tentacles puppeteered and, of course, used as reference by Imageworks to do some great CG tentacles. And here, partly simply because it's the way we make films now, but also because of that action sequence, they're, of course, all computer-generated tentacles. But it matched the look. I thought Alfred Molina looked really cool. I didn't have a problem with that at all. They're also slightly different because, he ends up getting that, I don't even know what it is, but the nanoparticle stuff on it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And apologies to anyone who really knows this stuff. I get so lost in the weeds with Marvel lore. But I really thought they did a great job of delivering the Doc Ock that I knew and loved, but making him something different.
It's funny that you say this because the original one, I think very few shots were practical, very few shots. I think people remember those shots because they were the most dramatic parts, especially when he's dying and especially when he's talking with Peter. I think that's why people remember them, because they were practical, they were puppeteers. Most of the other shots were full CG anyway. But I think people kind of connected it to be real.
But I don't think people know. I don't think people know which ones were which is great. That's the
I know. Which is exactly the cool thing about this. But no, this is obviously they had Alfred Molina on wires. They had him also on a platform. You'll see that on the footage that I'm gonna put while we're talking. He's actually there on set with the full suit. He doesn't have the arms, of course. He only has placeholder for the arms with greens and tracking markers. But he is actually on a platform. Obviously, as you can see on the platform, he looks a bit stiff. He looks a bit weird because, of course, he's being held and he's being moved around. He doesn't have, when you're being held by the tentacles, you're supposed to have a weightless feeling. You're supposed to waver because you are being held by the by the tentacles. So they ended up replacing him fully in CG. I think most people don't notice that, and they probably think that's his body. But practically the only thing that was used for real was Alfred's Molina's face, and of course the acting. They used the body that they shot on camera as full reference for everything. Yeah. They were very keen on that, on keeping it as close to the performance as possible, both for him and also for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, which we'll talk about that in a bit later, especially on the final sequence. because Tom Holland's suit is full CG, although he does have a suit on set, but it's not that suit that they ended up using. But yeah, no, I thought it was wonderful. There's also like some beautification and some de-aging on Alfred Molina's shots on some of them. There's not a lot of information out there for this right now. I don't really know which shots were, but it is written and talked on a few places that it was de-aged. And obviously it has to be. He's so old these days. Like it was 20 years ago that 20 years ago the other film showed up, so yeah.
No, I don't think anyone is surprised that there's some sort of de-aging just to fit them into that world a bit more. Especially because Tobey Maguire and Andy Garfield are generally young. I mean, they're not young either, but they're younger than their counterparts there. No, that was cool.
But I feel like this is the perfect combination. We keep talking about this on this podcast. It's always a theme, the practical, the digital. This was a perfect example of how the practical really helped the digital, I think, at least in my opinion. The work that the team of special effects did on set, led by Dan Sudik, I think that's his name, Dan Sudik, and his amazing special effects team. He's been like a senior of the Marvel movies. He's been almost all of them, I think, practically. And so he did amazing things. He had like bridges breaking, had cars breaking on half. They even throw the car against the water barriers and everything. And it became an amazing source of reference for everything. Although they ended up replacing that car with a CG car, but keeping the water. It's really cool because they kept some parts of the practical, then they put other parts in CG, and I still continue to say this. We say that on every episode. The more you shoot, the better everything is going to look like. Even if you're not going to use any of it, at least you have a reference for how the lens looked, of how the lighting looks, of how the chromatic aberration looks, and everything was shot for real at some moment, at least. At least there's a plate to go back to check everything. And it's really testament to the amazing collaboration between the effects department and the VFX department, I think. That's why this scene looks so cool and looks so photoreal and looks so good, I thought it was brilliant, yeah.
I thought it was great. There was a fun story that Digital Domain told me in relation to a trailer that included this sequence in the Befores and Afters article, where they had a sign, heading into New Jersey or New York or wherever it is, and someone on Twitter said, "Oh, that's not what that imagery would look like for real." So, Marvel, Sony got DD to change that before the final shot. Now, look, that's always the case. Trailer visual effects shots are often different from final visual effects shots. But I just thought that was cool to learn about the attention to detail they're going for there.
Really I know. Cool. There's even like, some people don't realize this maybe, but there's even VFX shots that are on the trailer that sometimes are not even part of the edit. Sometimes they get cut. Yeah. That happens a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of films that shots go away.
Yeah, and
so that's
for the final sequence, which we'll get to, there's of course that huge, crazy controversy. But we'll come to that.
Yeah, there's two. There's yeah, but yeah, no, this massive congratulations to the entire team at DD and also the special effects team, because they did something really difficult. This is a daytime shot. Not easy to light something in daytime to make it look real. Because, when everything is at nighttime, it always looks cool. You have the black to hide, and then you have the red lights and the blue lights. Everything looks always cool with blue and red lights. This is just like 12 o'clock in the afternoon, sunlight pouring down with harsh shadows. Always very tricky to do, always very difficult to handle. So congratulations, it's awesome. And not to mention, there's a bunch of retime shots. I really would advise everyone to go and read Ian's interview at Before and Afters. He has three main interviews of the three sequences on his website. And especially the interview about this sequence is really fascinating because they go into details about the lidar scanning and about how they iterated during months, about what software they use. It's very detailed, Ian. Congratulations, because it's a fantastic interview that you've done.
Thanks. No, and the retime stuff is fascinating because, of course, in these Marvel films, they have these slow-mo moments, and I always wondered how that impacts simulations
it's
and
a
compositing.
nightmare.
And everyone knows it does impact them. But
it's a nightmare. But he explains it really well, and I think the interview is really cool about that because that sequence we're talking about when the car flies through Spider-Man when he's hitting him in slow motion. But go and read the interview. We're not going to talk more about it.
Let's jump to what we're calling, I think, the mirror dimension. Just before that sequence happens, obviously Peter has stolen this cube and he's racing away from Doctor Strange's lair, whatever that's called in New York. I really love that little sequence because that's when Strange pushes him out of his own body for an astral projection. Have I got that right? Hugo? And in the interview I did with Framestore, one of the things I totally forgot to ask them about is during that sequence, and we talked about how they shot some of that on the backlot and on a set, but then ultimately again it needed to be completely CG. But because it kind of goes into slow motion, there's this squirrel. And I really wanted to mention the squirrel to Framestore. And I think we talked about it really briefly. But I was kind of again, just trying to find those silly details. So people have asked me about the squirrel on Twitter. I'm afraid I don't have any extra information from Framestore. So apologies. But I just wanted to mention that bit of it, Hugo.
And it's not on the breakdowns of the visual effects society entries. It's not there. So unfortunately, we don't know anything about this squirrel. Congratulations to the artists that worked on it.
Did a great job on the squirrel.
I know. It's so funny that we're focusing on the squirrel and there's this massive full CG scene in front of us, which is fucking awesome. And this thing actually... They even went back and repurposed some of the setups that they've used on Doctor Strange itself, the compositing setups of how to make the look of this thing. This is actually something that I forgot to mention when we were talking about the bridge. This is something that I found it really funny on your interview when you were asking, did you went back and get some of the stuff? And his answer was it's gone. There doesn't exist. It was so sad to see that. It's so sad to see that the assets are gone.
Yeah. I was sad to learn that because I'd just done some interviews about Matrix and also the Unreal Engine 5 experience, where it turns out Warner Brothers had kept all these hard drives of Escape and Mannix's work, right? Or they found bits and pieces of it. And I guess the thing is, Hugo, that they're going to remodel these things, retexture them, re-rig them. It's not always helpful to chase down old files.
No, but it's a great story. And I felt that and somehow in me, because I try to store everything, somehow I feel like we should store some of it. And I feel like certain films and certain visual effects should be kept, the files of them, for almost an archaeological digging purpose, you know. I feel like that's a shame that we lose most of it. Yeah.
I'm happy to keep them in my basement, just letting everyone know.
This happens in games as well. There are very famous games which we lost the code for. For example, very famously, Konami in Japan lost the original code of Silent Hill 1, which is one of the most important horror films of games of all times. There's no code. No one knows where the code is. Maybe it's on someday we'll find the hard drive somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's a shame that we lose these files. And I know they can't be repurposed, but from a historical point of view, I feel that they are very important, the way they tell the story of how they've built it, the pipelines that were used at the time. And I feel like it would have been awesome if the facilities would have kept one machine with the hard drive, everything synced, everything working, so that you can still go back. And this kind of museum kind of thing could be quite interesting in 30, 50 100 years from now. I think I feel like that.
I put the question out on Twitter, not referencing Spider-Man or Matrix, about that, and a lot of CTOs and CG soups and I think layout and asset people replied. I might try and put that in the show notes about how they often have that conversation, but it's very hard to go anywhere because, of course, all studios have different proprietary tools, and there's not too much agreement on consistency and transparency and security. So, Anyway,
it's a shame. But yeah, they did repurpose some of the Astral body sequence from the old, not old, well, it's not old, 2015, the oldish composites from the original Doctor Strange, which were also then at Framestore as well.
Yeah. But can I just say, this sequence is just gigantic in itself, and we could talk for 2 hours about it. I literally loved that New York was kind of combined with the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really wanted to mention on this podcast was the thing that Framestore told me and Kelly Port told me was that almost wasn't quite the original plan. As we always say, Marvel changes its ideas and things develop. But that sort of combining of two worlds like that, I think was the general idea. But to combine the Grand Canyon and New York so much, was sort of late in the game. So kudos to Framestore for actually making that happen even more. And then going bananas, ape shit crazy with the kaleidoscopic look and feel of that.
Yeah, there is three major moments on that sequence. I've seen some of the original concept art very close to the concept art, which is beautiful. There are three main moments. Fascinating how they've picked up a procedural city of New York and actually used rigging tools to rig the city. Normally you rig an animation or a creature, but they actually put rigging tools for the city so they can contort it and rotate it and move it. It's really cool how they did that. That's phase one. Kind of looks amazing, but very, very homage to the original Doctor Strange, really. And then phase two is like what you say, it kind of melts between Grand Canyon and the city. And it's so funny because while Spidey and Doctor Strange are talking, you see it on the background, the focus, like this kind of mesh of rocks covering the city. It's awesome. It's really cool. All those like morphing and kind of like the rock is almost eating the buildings is really, really nice touch. That's second phase. And then third phase, full trippy, completely bonkers kaleidoscope mode where it looks like someone has had some mushrooms and let's just go for it. It's
and don't
which
forget
is
portals.
Really cool.
Portals is a huge part of this.
Oh
too,
yeah, the portal of him just falling and falling and falling. It's so
and
cool.
Someone tell me how you project and render and comp that sort of stuff. I mean, I've done an interview about it, but I still think it looks amazing. That's an interesting point, Hugo, and the technical details I'm going to leave to the article, and maybe you can mention a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
I feel like the filmmakers here have absolutely entrusted Framestore to do this sequence from a much more art direction point of view. Yeah. They had, of course, in the previous Spider-Man film, done that amazing Mysterio illusion sequence.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, came up with so many of the gags in that sequence. Again, I feel like, yes, Framestore can pull it off technically, and they can go and shoot actors on blue screen and, obviously have digital doubles. But the art direction and the craziness of it is really almost a Framestore trademark, I'm almost going to say.
But it is. It is. At this stage, now that we've been doing this for a long time, like not the podcast, but I mean, you've been covering visual effects for a long time. I've been working in visual effects for a long time. You can kind of start to see the facilities trademarks, You start to see that. You start to see a Framestore style, a DNEG style, and a Veta style, an ILM style. And no disrespect to anyone, because I think making just a photoreal, completely accurate scene is as difficult as making a creative scene. So I think they all are very important to happen. But on this case, Framestore seems to me just the same way they did with Doctor Strange and on the original Spider-Man, like you said. They seem to have this flair of creativity to experiment and make these kaleidoscope effects and play really with perception. They have a really, it must be, obviously this all comes down to the amazing concept art that was created and of course their talented team of creating, because obviously you don't keep creating while you're in production. Once you settle on a look, you go for it. And obviously you keep changing things, but you keep changing them in one way. You can't radically change it. But it does feel to me that Framestore, yeah, I know, but you know what I mean? Like, what I mean is like the idea would be to be a kaleidoscope. They're not going to change it to something else. That's what I mean. Like what I feel like is like they are very good at doing this. The same way when you look at the way that DNEG works, where they have completely nailed the invisible. Like that's it. Like you don't even know they were there. They're like the typical magician,
Yeah.
So, and Framestore has become this facility that creates these beautiful, highly stylized, but still photoreal worlds. And I feel like I can relate to that. I really enjoy this type of work and this kind of look. I like it personally, from my personal opinion. I really like it.
I really agree with you. And I do know that other facilities can do it. I mean, obviously ILM did these morphing, bending worlds in the first Doctor Strange, right?
Yeah.
But there is something about this feels like almost kind of a sequel to the illusion sequence.
Yeah.
The Mysterio. It just feels like that. I don't know why. And also, just picking up a point you made about concept art. Look, the thing that I've learned only relatively recently, which I love, is that, yes, these films are heavily planned and concepted by Marvel's Sony team, right? For Spider-Man anyway. But then, of course, DD and Framestore and Imageworks have internal art departments.
Yeah.
That,
go further.
This is during post-production.
Yeah.
That they
keep going. They keep going.
Concept
they keep
art,
going.
right?
But that's why these facilities are the top of the game, because they can still, during production, still tweak conceptual, and which is testament to their pipeline, because having a pipeline that flexible is incredible these days, and having a methodology where you can still pipe in a different concept mid-production is something unheard of 10 years ago or 15 years ago, something that would have cost too much money, but these days it is possible. It's amazing. I really like this sequence, and especially when it hits, like when the two worlds collide on the kaleidoscope and then we get really bonkers. One small shout out I have to say about this sequence, and it kind of moves through the whole film, not just this sequence. It goes all the way to the end. I know how much you love stuffies and this kind of stuff. It's really cool to see the box, which is just a cube of green sticks
I love it.
that they are carrying around on the set. And it's really cool. And a lot of people were kind of like, I was having a debate with someone on social media about this, about like, why would they put that cube and why would they do that? It makes sense because the object itself is a moving object that kind of changes, because it's kind of this kind of puzzle box. And yes, of course, a prop master could have done it. Yes, of course, they could have done a beautiful object, as we've had on other films. But having that green box allows them to keep developing that look and also keep changing the box so that it keeps going throughout the film, because it's kind of a character in a way of the film, because it's the button that can end everything. It's almost the doomsday device of the film. And I just find I love seeing Tom Holland walking around with the green box and jumping around.
It's just a wireframe, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
just a wireframe.
It's like a tracking cube. Well, that's what it is. Yes, I think in the Framestore interview they mentioned that they actually, of course, had multiple directions for this thing and went down many design paths. I kind of like what it is in the end. It's very easy to comprehend that if you shuffle the levers in it, something happens. But yes, that's some of my favorite behind the scenes footage is flipping and jumping with this green thing. Love it. Love it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's great work from Framestore. We're going to have to jump right to the end now, which is the Statue of Liberty sequence featuring all Spider-Man, pretty much all the baddies,
Doctor Strange.
Environments.
Doctor Strange. It has portals. God. It has MJ. It has oh my God, how much can you put? Let's put everything in the kitchen sink. This is a big sequence. It is a big sequence. Yeah. And this was, as I understood from your articles and from what I've read, it's mostly Imageworks that worked on the sequences. That's where was their main thing. That was their
main thing, yeah. And a couple other facilities did things like there's a fight on the shield that falls into the water. And so, just like every Marvel film, there's a whole bunch of facilities involved. Let's go to the elephant in the room, Hugo. The trailer in Brazil, I think, or somewhere.
It was Brazil, yeah.
Right. Featured this sequence, and you saw a big Sandman. You saw...
Lizard, yeah. It was
Lizard.
There as well, yeah.
I think you might have seen one Spider-Man. I can't remember now.
No, we saw one. Yeah, you see one Spider-Man, the one on the top, the one that is flying. Yeah. Directly.
It appeared that Lizard was hitting nothing.
Yeah,
in the air.
You see Lizard's face. So this was just in Brazil. So they got the B-roll for all the places to make the trailers, and apparently for some reason in Brazil you see Lizard being hit by a punch.
That's right.
But there's nothing there. You just see his face moving.
Yeah.
And obviously the internet went bananas about this. Like they went nuts. They went nuts. You even had people on YouTube painting in other Spider-Mans to see that this was actually the three Spider-Mans. Yeah. It was just insanity. And obviously on the final film, all three Spider-Mans are there. Like you have one Spider-Man for each baddie, and the only one that makes contact is the lower Spider-Man. I don't know which of the Spider-Mans it is because they're quite tiny. But the lower Spider-Man kicks with his leg, like it does a rotation flip, and hits with the leg on Lizard, and it's fascinating, isn't it? This film was already very, like, everyone was commenting, oh, what if they come? What if the other Spider-Mans are there? What if the other Spider-Man's there? Everyone was nuts about this because no one knew. And shout out to Marvel and Sony for keeping this a secret.
I know.
Because
how did those actors do these interviews and lie for months and months and months? Good on them. I should say that I quickly asked Imageworks about that trailer that seemed to have a missing Spider-Man, and they were very, short about it, not in a bad way, but just saying, look, we often deliver multiple elements and layers, and they would have just did what they did with it, which is actually true, right?
They probably were asked, could you guys go into the comp and just switch off 2 layers, please? So we can have a version. No, that sequence is, well, obviously we're focusing on just that part, but let's not forget that this is an entire CG Liberty Island that they've built with the full Statue of Liberty, interior and exterior. You then have the architecture, the foliage, you have the scaffolding, you have the construction yard, you have the island itself, you have the city on the back, you have the water, the distance. It is massive. It's a full CG set. And filmed on set for real was really practically just some shots of them running and jumping on the scaffolding over a blue screen. There's not much there in terms of footage. There's also some shots of Tom Holland on top of a replica of the Statue of Liberty. There's just those shots. Most of them are full CG shots. Like the majority of the shots are full CG.
Which, look, people who've listened to me harp on about Marvel films before have probably heard me say, I usually love 2/3 of every Marvel film. And then the third act is a big, huge climax sequence. I did feel here, although I was super excited to see the 3 Spider-Men, I thought the plot point with Goblin and Sandman was nice. there's so much going on. I found it a bit hard sometimes to follow the action.
Yeah.
There's also, they got so excited about scaffolding. Scaffolding appeared in so many 2021 films. It's astronomical.
Yeah.
But that's okay. But then when I sort of, as you say, Hugo, looked at some breakdowns and did some interviews with Imageworks, it's just blows my mind the rigid body sims and simulations that were required to bring part of that Statue of Liberty stuff down the shield and to enable the fighting, and then to have the Sandman particle stuff going on through it. They did a stellar job. It's just one of those things where I probably need to watch it again.
I'd be honest, like the second time I watched it, I kind of switched off a little bit. I feel like the same as you. It had a bit of a retro vibe where you just have, okay, now we're going to have the fight sequence, like the big finale. It's a bit too much, and I kind of prefer the rest of the film. I prefer the other more focused CG scenes where you have conversation between Doctor Strange on the mirror dimension. I like those, even like the way that they're making the spell. I love that sequence where they are in wire work, and we haven't talked about that sequence, but it's a lovely section as well. I know what you mean. It's a bit too much, but unfortunately, they couldn't really do anything about it, I feel. And there's also, of course, Appy's. The problem I had as well was because we already had a big fight with all of them, kind of, on Happy's apartment.
Yes,
that was already a very big set. It was already
Huge
a very big suit. That would have been, on a normal time, that would have been the ending of the film, because it's a huge VFX sequence. But then they went the extra mile.
And when did that happen, Hugo? It was at the end of May, wasn't it?
Yeah. The end of May.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God. That is so oh my God. Yeah, well, okay. That was a good joke. Yeah, you got me there. You stopped me on my tracks.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. No, no disrespect to Imageworks and Chris Wagner. Like, I don't disrespect to anyone. Like, I felt the sequence is amazing. I just felt from a directorial point of view and a storytelling point of view, it might have been a bit too much. But, one thing I really wanted to talk about, because obviously we can't talk about everything. There's too much simulations. Obviously, there's a gigantic pipeline of deep compositing. If you guys go and read more in detail and see some of the breakdowns, this entire thing is comped in deep compositing, very heavy particle systems, and of course the scaffolding, and of course the CG. Like that shot, the shot that we were joking about, the Brazil trailer, that shot has everything. I think it's like a showreel piece. Whoever comped that shot, it has everything in one go. It doesn't really miss anything, even matte painting on the back.
I haven't even mentioned electro in that sequence.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Lighting the particles, the scaffolding, the characters.
Yeah.
Imageworks, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that is an amazing shot. But I wanted to talk about something that is really impressive on this film, because a lot of people kind of like think, oh yeah, well, they had Spider-Man with a suit on set. Yeah, of course he had the suit. He's with the suit. That's just the suit. He's just walking and doing everything with the suit. It's all practical. He's doing all his stunts. Oh my God, he's all doing his stunts. Let me just put this out there, because if you don't know, every single shot is a CG body. His face is used, of course, but it's mind-blowing if you start thinking about it. Obviously, they had a real suit on the day, and they had a Spider-Man suit, but then at some point, the direction changed, and they wanted to use a different suit. They wanted to use... And in fact, I think that has to do with the storytelling. They wanted to differentiate him from the other two Spider-Mans, because they do have three very different suits. And if he kept the normal suit you wear just before that sequence, you wouldn't notice which one is which. And so by having the Iron Man look, which is the metallic suit, I don't know the name of it, the Mac whatever suit he has, it really differentiates. So from a story point of view, it makes perfect sense. And obviously, you couldn't shoot it for real because they were on a stage with blue screen. So you couldn't have a highly reflective suit on a blue screen like that. So they shot like a pretty matte suit, which was a Spider-Man suit. And then they did rotomation of every frame and then comped in the CG suit. And they kept all the little minuscule acting things of Tom Holland, which is a very physical actor. Kept all the little things. I watched the breakdowns, and you see everything there. This is stellar work, invisible work, and I know it's, for some people, it's not as impressive as the big fight scene with everyone, but I think this is the most impressive part of the whole sequence.
Yeah, no, Hugo, you're
it's
right.
insane.
It's actually one of the most impressive things about pretty much all the Marvel films, where even in sometimes very generic bedroom, walking down the street shots, they're a fully CG costume. And it's for all the reasons that we've brought up, which is flexibility. Sometimes they simply haven't had time to build the costumes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because the stunt double looks a bit different than Tom Holland in the same sort of costume, but you've got to be consistent. Sometimes it's because they're doing stunts, so he wears a bit of a tracking suit, either a grey tracking suit or more of a, I'm going to say IMO cap type IM.
Yeah, he does that on the bridge. Yeah, he does that on the bridge sequence. He has this kind of like grid, like grey suit. Yeah.
Very common. This people knew this happened, of course, because it's superhero stuff. But I remember writing this article about the time suits in Endgame, and Framestore did some work there where they're just hanging around in that big warehouse, and they're just doing there's a bit of a key shot where they walk, and all they wore on the day was their suits that they would normally wear, but they weren't the time suits. So Framestore replaced everything. And if I'm going to say, if I hadn't done an article on it and people hadn't done articles on it, no one would have known.
No.
They would have just assumed it was a normal suit.
The same way here, everyone would have thought it was just a suit. It makes perfect sense. More than half of the sequence is full CG. So you already have those in CG anyway. Yeah. So it's not a big deal to replace these shots with a CG suit. I'm not bringing down the work. Of course, this is still very difficult work, but it's not I understand why they've done it. And I feel like it worked because while all the messiness of this fight happens, I kind of can pick up which Spider-Man is which. I can. Because Tom Holland's is the very reflective one with the Iron Man thing. Then the type of... You can kind of feel the tall and slim figure of Garfield, and then you can kind of feel like the more bulky body and also like the slower moving Tobey Maguire. You really distinguish them on the fight, which is great. I thought that was a great piece, and would have been a difficult thing if they all three of them looked great, looked the same. Yeah, there's this really, really awesome on-set photo of all three of them taking a photo with their three stuntmen. So you have 6 Spider-Mans. It's a great photo.
All right, cool. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned already the rotomation, the body match moves for doing a Tom Holland suit replacement. I do want to talk to the teams that do that work. It's incredible. The creases. I want to know whether they're using witness cameras or is it just some incredible match moving from eye.
It's a mix of both and a mix of everything, and also like they had something really cool on this film, which they had like an on-set scanner so they could scan everyone, which is not common. Commonly, you kind of book the scanning and then you bring the actors and then you scan them.
You go to a booth.
But because they had it on the set, this was cool because it made them be able to scan everything. They scan all the actors, all the extras, everyone, and then they also even end up scanning the main actors with multiple different clothings. With Tom Holland with the Spider-Man suit, without the Spider-Man suit, without this suit, and that was really pivotal because when you start having this kind of like builds, then it's easier. Everything becomes easier because then you start having like a full CG version of his body. Obviously, the tricky part is to match it perfectly frame by frame, and it is literally frame by frame that you have to kind of go through and move the rig and the body to match every single crease, and of course augment some parts because then you can make the performance even bigger and stronger and more Spider-Man looking. So. No, it's a fantastic scene, and I also like the fact that this scene does have some nice, it's not just action, 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 action. It has some nice moments of pause. You know, it sometimes stops, and you have the MJ sequence with, what's his name? Ned? No, not Ned. Ned, right? His friend.
Yep.
Yeah, Ned. So that's a really funny sequence that interrupts the action, where you have the portal and then they can't close the portal, and then the lizard walks into the room. And by the way, when he walks into the room, that's a full scan, lighter scan room as well in CG, and they even made the full CG versions of both MG and Ned running around. No one even noticed that on the film, but it is all fully projected. But that's a really nice touch of interrupting the action like that with some really funny set pieces. And my favorite part of this entire section is not even the VFX section, is the fact that they actually made up the meme of Spider-Man, of the three Spider-Mans pointing at each other. I just love that they've done this on the film. You know, that famous meme of you having Spider-Mans pointing at each other. They actually did it on the film, on the moment when they're like discussing the gooey Spidey substance that comes out of Tobey Maguire. It's so
Go whip. I know.
It's such a funny sequence. No, I feel like that's an amazing scene. Yeah.
Well, Hugo, we got through talking about just 3 of the big sequences in the film. Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned the digital suits as well. That to me is a real breakthrough in these superhero films, and gives so much flexibility, but also is unnoticeable, frankly, in some of the smaller shots. So I think all I can say is congratulations to everyone who worked on the film.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Sony Marvel for reinventing Spider-Man in a way. That's also an exciting part of the whole process too.
I'm glad you said that just now. There's one thing that comes out of this film which is even more strong than any VFX and everything that you've seen on the film, and that's really reinventing this character and making him so grounded. That ending, the fact that he loses everything at the end, is very strong, and I don't even know what they're gonna do now, because no one knows him, and he's gone. He's been deleted from the world. The ultimate sacrifice, like leaving everyone behind just so that he can save the world. That's really touching stuff, and I felt that was almost on par to the Sam Raimi's endings and the Sam Raimi way that he made Spider-Man 1 and 2, which also is very strong with MJ and the way that he can't carry on his life. This is so... I was a big reader of Spider-Man when I was young, when I was a teenager, and even younger than that. This really is close to the comic book, and I love this idea that he's sacrificed, and it deals with memory and the fact that no one knows what he's done, because at this stage, this is what it's going to be cool, because he's done all this stuff with the Avengers, he saved the world, he did all those things, now no one knows that he's done that, and so he's like starting again. It's fascinating, but so sad, isn't it? It's such a sad sequence, the end, where he goes to MJ's coffee and she doesn't know who he is. It's really sad.
Yeah. Yet another thing that we shared with people in the audience that had, people coming together after COVID, having not gone to the cinemas, and here we were being impacted again by bloody Marvel with our emotions. Thanks a lot, Sony and Marvel. No, I loved it too.
Yeah, it was great.
Let's wrap up there, Hugo. I really enjoyed chatting about this and giving some shout outs to some really key sequences, but congratulations to everyone involved on the film. There's a lot more vendors and a lot more shots that we didn't get a chance to talk about. I will say that there's one scene of a Spidey jumping down to the Rockefeller area of New York City.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm gonna say, if you watch that sequence and watch Hawkeye, well, no, that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say anything more than that. But, that's another thing that I like as well about Marvel and sharing assets and the way these visual effects get done.
Yeah, so absolutely.
That's where I'm wrapping up on the film, Hugo. Got any final thoughts?
No, that's it. Like, I think people should go and watch it again. It's definitely, you get more out of it the second time because there's so much to unpack, there's so much to watch. Make sure you stick around for the credits because there are 2 end credit scenes, not just one. And well, kind of like 2 short ones, but yeah, it kind of connects with another film franchise, which is actually going to be interesting if it ever happens. I think it would have been nice if it would have happened. But yeah, it's and also like shout out to that end cartoonish hand-drawn sequence, which is fantastic. The end credits of these films are always amazing, and this is no different from any other Marvel movie. I love the handbook written, like pen ink thing that they have at the end. This is a fantastic art direction there as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, make sure you head over to Hugo's Desk for the Patreon and the YouTube channel, of course, if you're only listening to this on audio. You can find me at beforesandafters.com. Thank you to our Patreons. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, Hugo. Always love chatting to you about these huge films.
Yeah, thank you, man. I'll see you all later. Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Go web. Bye.
Whip video.